My name is George Hopkins. I'm the director of the Cadets, and here today to present a little background on the Cadets 2003 production, Our Favorite Things. Our program design came from a conscious choice to entertain the audience and to allow the members the opportunity to enjoy real applause. From the standpoint of a teacher, there's really nothing better than standing on the sideline, hearing the applause and watching the eyes of your students fill with tears. It's one of the reasons we do this, and for students, the thrill of performance is probably their primary motivation. The program came out of deciding to again perform Rocky Point Holiday. We had had requests for years, and with 2003 being the 20th anniversary of the Corps' first title, we decided to bring it back. With that decision made, the designers chose to put together a program of fan favorites. We wanted melody, we wanted a tune you could sing. I'd been to an Allegro concert some months back, so Favorite Things came to the forefront. And then Mark Sylvester, the Corps' visual consultant and past designer, came up with the idea of creating a warm-up that moved directly into the performance. The idea was a bit unusual. We even had people with the announcer each night, myself sometimes. We actually had to cue each of these entrances so that the tubas here would enter right on cue and right within the context of the timing of the show. The 2003 opener was Clifton Williams' Fanfare and Allegro. The Cadets were modeled after Santa Clara from the time I and the design team for the Cadets, many of whom are still with the Corps, became involved with the Cadets back in the early 80s. So when it came to looking for an opener, Fanfare and Allegro was the obvious choice. All shows have things you would love to do again. We began Fanfare Allegro with this long Accelerando. It was originally far later in the original, but we extended the Accelerando with the drop-off being into silence. The concept, the killer visual, would carry the release. But as you see, we only had a 16-count visual, and we relied on the color guard and the guard toss to carry it, and it really wasn't pulled off as we anticipated. That lack of effect really carried through the first minute or so of Fanfare and Allegro, as we had to rely on the performance of the members, and really not the show design, to carry the overall production. After the Fanfare, which was an abbreviated version, the next Allegro section was really pulled from the middle of the chart. We utilized this just as transitional material to give the Corps the opportunity to move at a good speed, to restage the elements, and to be prepared for the next hit. We often worked with the idea of stages off and on camera, if you will. With all on the field, we worked to segment who you looked at and who you did not. Example, in this segment, we hoped that the audience would look at the color guard. They had great musical work, they had a great performance. Most people did, but the judges seemed to like to look sometimes where nothing occurred. So we are often criticized for the lack of movement, example in the brass line here. We thought the section worked very well, but you needed to watch where we wanted you to watch. As the tempo kicked up, keyboards took the lead. From here, we had one of our strongest sections of the program related to coordination. We lined up the baritones, bass drums, and the color guard, then the mellophones, the toms, sabers, and then the sopranos, snares, and another segment of color guard. This was a rewrite section earlier on, and the trumpets actually, if you go back and take a look, actually had to move 75 yards across the field to get to their original position for their feature. Unlike the Santa Clara version of this piece from the early 70s, we decided to rely on percussion as a key ingredient to effect. You'll see percussion features throughout the program. We are proud of the fact, and Tom Monk's percussion arranger gets all the credit, these percussion fills were really effects of their own. They weren't just fills, they contributed to the overall musical presentation. At the end here, a bit of a fugue that works into the final statement was composed by Don Hill, the brass arranger. There's really nothing in the original that fit our needs, so we created that previous section just to get us to this final statement. Finally, after a little bit of silence, we go to speed and movement, which are traditions with the Cadets. We really feature what we believe is the best color guard the Cadets have had for many years. Many question the Corps selecting Malagueña as a second production. In fact, I would say that some adjudicators actually questioned it to the end of the year. Back to my living room in October when we selected the piece, we were looking for a middle production that was guaranteed to tear the house down. We listened to all the classics. We'd recently done Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy back a year or so and Moondance prior to that, and we knew what we wanted in terms of effect. At the end of the day, when we thought about things, you had to play Malagueña when you talked about our favorite things. The Madison Scouts did great stuff with this piece. I remember standing behind the Scouts waiting to go on with the Cadets and wishing we did not have to follow that. Go way back, and I remember watching Muchachos bring the crowd to their feet with the same chart. We believed we could provide our own statement, we believed we could do our own interpretation, and we thought we could do an excellent job with the production. As it turned out, people loved Malagueña. The crowd went crazy every night. There is this relationship with drum corps and old tunes. The activity criticizes corps for doing what's been done. Repeat selections and you are no longer innovators. Yet, Fanfare and Allegro was done in 1973. Most of the crowd at, say, the Texas shows this year were 10 years from being born when Fanfare and Allegro was put to the field. The cadets who played Rocky Point Holiday this year were 1 or 2 years old when the cadets last played this piece in 1982 or 1983. And although we remember Madison's Malagueña as a classic, many of today's fans will talk about the cadets version 10 years from now. New audiences need to hear the classics. This introduction to the main Malagueña theme was well coordinated in our opinion. We had the guard feature, we had the keyboard feature, and also the big drill move, the big gate that was stolen from the 27th Lancers from years ago. We worked again with stages in Malagueña. As the cameraman and director show us, each segment, all scattered around the field, had their moment in the sun. We worked so that the audience could turn their head from place to place. That was our intent. So we began with the mid-voices here with color guard. We moved back to percussion. A lot of this staging was really created by the members themselves, really just messing around on the field at rehearsals. We moved back to the trumpets. We moved back to stage 2 to the toms. And if you take a look at the high camera video, you'll see that these segments are split by 40 and 50 yards. It's really not easy at all for the members to pull off. We go back to an extended brass feature, back to a percussion feature that was rewritten probably about mid-season. And then finally, from the original composition, we have the final statement to complete this whole segment. Percussion groove was a big change to the original composition. We used the cowbells, this groove, and the visuals behind the ensemble to really alter the character of the piece. An interesting device we've learned to use as a crowd. The transition from percussion to swing is really not good here coming up. It's very choppy, but we'd plan on the crowd reaction after the percussion feature to last at least 8 counts. So we were able to use the applause as the transition. It's a bit of a gamble in the planning. If it did not go well and it was quiet, it would definitely have been an issue. But it really worked to our favor, and we were able to move into this next swing section without having to incorporate another piece of music. The 2003 Cadets were really about performance. We realized about midway through the season that we would have some issues related to effects, so we really concentrated on the performance aspects of the ensemble. As it turned out, we ended up second in brass, second in guard, first in percussion for the 3rd year in a row. Really, all the performance captions, the members themselves, they just did a great job with this production that we gave to them for the year. As I said, we've altered this tune quite a bit, but classic selection needs to be played. So when we arrived at the end here, we pretty much played the piece straight up. We used solos from the days of the Muchachos and the Caballeros. The guard staging to the left was pretty unique and really allowed the guard to assist the final production. We used our own devices of movement, and when we finally get to the final statement, we just played it. And we let the kids play it full out, played it as it was written originally. We did add a little bit of a tilt in there with a favorite things quote. For the most part, we're playing Malagueña the way you've heard it for years and years and years. I've been a proponent of 13-minute shows for some time. Course changed to 11.5 minutes about 10 years ago, and since then the cadets are always rushed. We moved so quickly into Rocky Point because we simply had no time remaining. Our program came in at about 11:30. It was rough on the kids, changing styles, no time to breathe, and no time to really take in the crowd. It was a bit unfortunate. The lack of time also forced us to shorten Rocky Point much more than we had planned. We'd actually learned Rocky Point first in the winter. It was, by Christmas, we'd had the whole piece completed. It was about 4 minutes long. The piece you're viewing here is about 2.5 minutes. What happened was, as we decided to expand Malagueña to make that work, we added in the ballad to the front side. The extra time had to come from somewhere, and we actually reduced Rocky Point to a shorter version of what people would remember from the early 80s. Right here we visually quote the G, an original logo of the Corps from the 80s, and also a drill form that was utilized at least 3 or 4 times over the last 15 years by the Corps. This middle section of the show was a change in the cadets versions. We opened up the features, inserted drill moves, and really let the percussion take the lead. This was unbelievably difficult for us to pull off. We probably spent more hours on this move here than anything in the show. The space differential between the percussion and brass, the brass building down into that form, was all very, very difficult, and really we were not able to pull it together until probably the last week or two. This next backfield section was forward for the first 2/3 of the season. We turned back for different musical textures. We wanted to set up the volume at the hit, but frankly, the brass line was also staged so far forward, it was unbelievably difficult to play at a piano volume level and to still play perfectly. The turnaround worked. Might have been a little bit long, but it was an excellent trade. Gave the guard a feature forward and really allowed us to set up this final fanfare. We always refer to this as Scarlet O'Hara. If you listen to the melody, it sounds a little bit like it was pulled from Gone with the Wind. So whether it was the 80s or 2003, the Corps always referred to this section as Scarlet O'Hara. And the ending to Rocky Point is something that many people remember. The Z-pull right here, created by George Zingali. The mellophone licks, originally arranged by Jim Prime. But pretty much from here to the end, we played the piece as is. The only thing we did is at about mid-season, we opened up this form from an original drill move to pull the Corps out 5 yards into the end zones for the ultimate effect, and as you can see from the audience reaction, something that I think was appreciated by everyone. 2003 was a learning experience for the team that put together this program. We've been together a long time, but I think we learned how to be clean again in all captions for the first time in a long time. And we reminded ourselves that to be the best of the best, we need to spend more time coordinating the arrangements, the visual, and the effects. It's not that difficult to be good, but the #1 enemy of great is good.